If you're anything like me, you might be a little obsessed with sketchbooks. In fact, I might be pushing the limit on the number of different sketchbooks one person can be actively working in at one time. Sketchbooks for watercolor, sketchbooks for markers, plainer sketchbooks, and sketchbooks for ink and mixed media. I basically have a sketchbook for everything right now. I go through them so quickly that I've started making my own because buying a new one every month, especially the really good ones with 100% cotton paper, can get outrageously expensive. In this video, I'm going to flip through page by page these four sketchbooks. Two of them I've made myself, and the other two are from Etchr that I already had in my collection. I'm also going to show you a preview of two other sketchbooks that I've been working in that are about halfway finished. And finally, I'm going to show you the new custom watercolor sketchbooks I've just finished making for myself this weekend using some of my favorite budget papers of all time. If you're new here, hello and welcome to my channel, Voluptas Ocularum. It means pleasure of the eye. My name is Stephanie, and I've been using sketchbooks to advance my watercolor and mixed media skills over the past 2 years. If you're curious about where I started and how I've advanced, you can check out my other sketchbook tours on my channel. Now, there are a lot of quote-unquote beginners tutorials and beginners exercises out there, but to be honest with you, they all bore me to absolute tears. I knew right from day one that if I had to do another color wheel, gradient versus flat wash exercise, or value chart, I might hold my breath until I pass out. When I got serious about improving my skills about 2 years ago, I felt like at the age of 39, I had been a perpetual beginner since the dawn of time. And I realized that if I wasn't challenging myself with subjects and techniques far beyond my current skill level, I was never going to get there. So I decided to ignore the step-by-step tutorial series and how to draw a single tree videos in favor of simply trying and failing and trying again using a sketchbook. There are two main methods that I use to advance my skills. The first is painting from my own reference images. I very rarely work from images that I myself haven't taken because for me, the connection to place, landscape, and memory is what I'm striving to capture in my work. I can't get that from an image that someone else took or of a place or a subject that I have no personal connection to. So in my sketchbooks, almost every single image with very few exceptions are from places that I have been and that inspire me. The second method I use in my sketchbooks is painting from life or painting plein air. This is for me by far the most rewarding and also the most frustrating way to advance my skills. Learning not only to credibly capture the conditions in front of me with limited time in the elements can be really difficult. But even the crudest representation of a moment in time, no matter how poorly rendered I feel like it is, brings me back to that moment when I look at my sketchbook later. I sometimes flip through my earlier sketchbooks, and even though it's so cringy to see my early efforts, I'm also immediately brought back to the exact place that I sat and tried to connect with the world around me through art. So enough ranting, let's get to the sketchbooks. The first sketchbook we're going to look through is my custom handmade 8x8-inch arch 300-pound cold press sketchbook. This behemoth takes wash after wash and is a total chunk monster. The second sketchbook is the Etchr Perfect sketchbook in landscape format with 140-pound cold press paper. All of these papers are 100% cotton, by the way. The third sketchbook is another handmade art sketchbook, this one in B5 portrait orientation with 140-pound cold press paper. And finally, we have this cute little A6 hot press accordion sketchbook from Etchr that I received in one of their mystery bags back in 2025. So I have a video where I showed the process of making this sketchbook. Most of you have probably seen it already, but if not, I'll link it in the description. This is an 8x8-inch or 20x20 centimeter square format sketchbook. When I made this, I wanted to see if I could use my extra thick 300-pound or 640 GSM arch 100% cotton cold press paper in a sketchbook format, and it turns out you can. The paper is a natural white color, slightly off-white, but not ivory. This is not stitched at all. The spreads are just scored, folded, glued, and then taped for extra security. It's probably the easiest sketchbook you'll ever make. The pages lay flat, though I do clip down the folded spreads because the pages tend to want to close due to the thickness of the paper. There are 40 pages if you count back and front, which I do. And because I bought this paper during a sale in 2024, It only cost me around £25 to make it, including all the materials I needed, bringing it to 63 pence per page. For my US audience, this is around $33.65 total and 85 cents per page. Thinking about trying to buy a pre-made sketchbook of this size and quality, I think you'd pay a minimum of $100 if you could even find such a sketchbook. Now, I showed these first few pages in my March 2026 sketchbook tour, so some of you may have seen them already. At this time of year, I was focused on painting from reference images, mostly from walks my husband and I had done in the previous 4 to 6 months, some from Spain, some from Somerset. Heading into March, this is my favorite photo from North Devon near Coombe Martin. We've driven past that many times on our travels there. And this picture is from when my garden was just starting to come to life and the primroses were popping up. March is my birthday month, so I had a lovely bouquet of spring flowers to enjoy. I took this sketchbook out for its first plein air adventures one lovely warm April evening. I have more footage of that in my plein air setup video. Then at the beginning of May, I went to Etchr Manor Gardens, which has the most incredible wisteria display you've ever seen in your life. You'll see lots more images from Etchr Manor Gardens in this sketchbook and others. Around this time, my peonies were going wild in the garden, and I painted these with my luminous red watercolor from Holbein. This is a view over Watchet on the North Somerset coast from the Quantock Hills. And by mid-May, I attended the International Watercolor Masters Festival in Shropshire. I never ended up posting a review of that because it felt like kind of a downer, but suffice to say, I didn't feel like I needed to return to that particular festival. But these pages are all from the grounds, either painted plein air or from photos that I took before or after my workshop. These lupins are from Dunster Castle Gardens, which we visited in May, but I didn't get around to painting these until June. I used the page vertically to capture the height of these beautiful flowers, and I was really happy with the looseness and the luminosity of these. After painting the lupins, I felt like I was on a roll with flowers, so I painted a yellow laburnum and purple azalea, as well as this bunch of wisteria, all from references I had taken at Etchr Manor Gardens, which is also where this arched garden perspective is from. Here we have two images from Stourhead National Trust, a place that I try to visit in every season because it's absolutely stunning, no matter the time of year. And this is a view over Trevenant's Cove in Cornwall that I took when my sister was visiting last year, and I liked the composition with the boat. In June, we went to Italy for our anniversary, and so these two pages are a structured perspective view in Modena and a more loose view over the Apennine Mountains where we hiked. This is one of the paintings I struggled with the most in this sketchbook, and then finally we have this quick, colorful study of the sea thrift at Seatown Beach in Dorset. And that brings us to the end of this sketchbook. So a few quick impressions about this sketchbook. I had envisioned using it plein air, but because of its size and thickness, I really only brought it out a few times when I was setting up my tripod. The thick paper felt incredibly luxurious to paint on, and I found I was able to layer different colors over top of each other and lift easily when I wanted to gain back some highlights. The times I did bring it outside was mostly in my own garden, like when I painted these peonies. And drawing flowers large was something I did quite a bit in this sketchbook, and I used larger brushes to enhance the flow of water and color over the page. One of the things I've been challenging myself with more recently is painting more complex landscape scenes that include architecture, so I really went for it over these spreads, using the natural symmetry of the garden alcoves at Etchr Manor as an inspiration throughout. I loved that I could glaze, layer, and lift so easily with this paper, intensifying color and shadow to give depth to my work. And throughout this spring and summer, I've been trying to work with a brighter and more vibrant palette, focusing on contrast and value as opposed to color realism. I found that when I spent more time fussing over some of the architectural scenes, and I'm still absolutely hopeless at painting figures, I would often contrast this tightness with looseness of nature in this sketchbook. All in all, I really enjoyed working on the paper in this sketchbook, and the only thing I would change is making it a little bit less thick in total and possibly doing it in a landscape A5 orientation so that it fits inside my plein air backpack. Let's move on to the next sketchbook in this tour, the Etchr Perfect Sketchbook in Landscape Orientation. I've had this in my collection since mid-2024, and I guess I was just waiting for the right time to use it, and spring of this year was that time. This is an A5 or 5.8 by 8.3 inch sized sketchbook with 100% cotton cold press paper that's 140 pound or 300 GSM. It's white, but similar to the arch paper before, it's neither bright white nor ivory. It has lay flat pages with stitched binding and a hard cover. There are 44 pages total in this sketchbook, and when I bought it in 2024, it was £36. I believe it now retails for $40, but if you're patient, you can probably find it on sale. This works out to 82 pence per page, or for my American friends, $1.10 per page, or $48 for the whole. Let's be clear, this is an objectively pricey sketchbook, but I am convinced Etchr is infusing their paper with addictive substances because their sketchbooks are absolutely phenomenal, and I'm constantly amazed by the quality of these things. I forgot to mention this, but I always start my sketchbooks from the back to prevent any fear of starting. I usually, but not always, use the first page or so for swatching, and in this case, it's my winter palette that you're seeing. The first image I did was a pen and wash drawing using my Pilot parallel pen on the train from London to Castlecary, based on a photo I had taken that day while walking around. The very next day, I took this sketchbook out for its first plein air adventure at Ford Abbey Gardens, where I worked across the spreads to capture all of the vegetation at ground level that was just starting to burst into life. And then we have another plein air painting from the Bishop's Palace Garden in Wells, where I live. I didn't get the proportion of the bench and the man sitting right, but I was more interested in the architecture beyond him during this exercise. I'm on a never-ending quest to capture the essence of a tulip, and I think they are so beautiful, but so incredibly difficult to portray. They're one of my favorite flowers, so I worked out this composition from 3 different references, mostly from back when I lived in Vancouver and everybody's front gardens were filled to the brim with different varieties of tulips. This is another double spread plein air painting, this time from around the moat nearby the Bishop's Palace. I had a lovely time sitting on the benches, looking towards the fortifications, and if you're curious, the only comments I got were kind and encouraging. In my ongoing tulip quest, I actually went to a mini workshop at Durham Park National Trust on a gorgeous spring day in April because they have an event called Tulip Mania. I was testing my new plein air setup with my larger board, my mini camp chair, etc., and I drew 4 pages of tulips from life using different techniques, including pen and wash, gouache, and watercolor. I ended my plein air session with an attempt to paint the chapel on the grounds, and all in all, it was a lovely day with stunning weather. When I say we had a beautiful spring, I'm not joking. We had our first shorts weather day in April when we went for a hike around Golden Cap in Dorset, where I painted this panoramic view over the Jurassic coast. On that same hike, I took loads of photos because the spring colors were so inspiring, especially once we got into the woods where the forest floor was completely carpeted with bluebells. I painted all of these from my own photos at home later. Here's a view of Iford Manor Gardens, which featured prominently in my previous sketchbook. Again, we have tulips here with some architectural details in the background. And this image was just a wet-on-wet cloud study that I did during the flight to France. We popped over for a quick visit with my in-laws who were staying in the south of France for 3 weeks at the beginning of May. Unfortunately, while we were there, it rained the entire time, so I didn't get to do any painting outside. But on the train from Bordeaux to the Bergerac airport, I painted these scenes from Dancing Ledge in Dorset that I had taken a few weeks earlier. More tulips from Iford Manor Gardens, this time in Shinhan gouache because I was pulling out some sets I had to test and realized I hadn't really used these paints. So this is a scene from Issageac, which is a town nearby where we stayed in France, and I really liked the blue shutters and the red flowers. Here's the first plein air painting I did at the International Watercolor Masters Festival in Shropshire, even though it was raining a little bit. My page got completely battered by raindrops, but I actually really liked the effect. Right after this, the sun came out and I painted another scene from the walled garden. And you'll notice that I started using some really bright colors during this session. It's because during the workshop, we were focused on landscape realism with really precise layers. And I was just feeling like I wanted to paint something quickly, freely, and much more vibrantly than the photorealistic image I had been working on all day. And on the next day, I painted these beautiful trees with arching branches. This will look familiar because I also painted it in my previous sketchbook. The second to last image is a panoramic view of Seatown Beach, where we drove for a little evening swim on a beautifully warm day in May. Finally, we have this scene over Bossington Beach on the North Somerset coast that I painted quickly in the beating sun while my husband and dog sheltered in the shade of a rock behind me. And that brings us to the end of this sketchbook. The sketchbook is incredibly special to me because, as you've seen, it's a reflection of the vast number of beautiful places we have all around us in the southwest of England. Because I painted so often from life, I feel deeply connected to the images that I created. I felt like I learned so much from each and every outdoor painting experience, and I improved my observational skills immensely. While not every page was painted from life, and not every page was super successful, I filled the sketchbook with pages that were beautiful and motivating. I love being able to paint across these spreads panoramically, opening up the view to really capture the immensity of what I was looking at and to help me clarify my composition. More so than the paper itself, which is excellent, it was the orientation of this sketchbook that made it so conducive to plein air painting. I could easily just pop this into my small backpack, and so I really learned just how important the format and the size of my sketchbooks is to me. Hello friends, it's my face. I just wanted to interrupt this video right in the middle and ask you for a big fat hairy favor. Apologies for my appearance. It is like plus 300 in my apartment right now, and so yeah, heat waves, right? Would you mind leaving a comment and telling me what sketchbook you're working in now, whether you like it, how big it is, what you're doing in it? Are you drawing in plein air? Are you doing reference photos? Are you doing a course? What do you do in your sketchbooks? Also, if you like this video and you want to show your appreciation, one way that you can do that is like and then do a little hype. A little hype at this point would go a long way towards telling YouTube that people like the kind of content that I'm creating. And it sort of helps me get on my way to be able to be a sort of self-sustaining channel. So if you don't mind just giving it a hype, leaving a comment, and doing a like, that would be so amazing. I would really appreciate it. And maybe one day I'll make you a sketchbook. Maybe. You never know. It could happen. All right, back to the video. Now this is the second handmade sketchbook in this tour. It is made up from Arch 140-pound cold press paper in a 7.5 inch by 11 inch portrait orientation. It is 100% cotton cold press paper in natural white, and it has the same lay flat glued binding that the previous homemade sketchbook had. This one has 40 pages as well, and the total cost for this sketchbook with all of my materials was £22, or around 55 pence per page. Now, I was really looking forward to working in this sketchbook and had a few issues with it, honestly. As you can see here, the pages did wave and buckle quite a bit, and I think that might have been down to the orientation of how I cut them. Each page really buckled a lot when I would put washes on it, and the other problem with this sketchbook is that it had gone off. The paper smelled terrible, so I actually kind of resisted working in it, especially with really wet washes, because anytime the paper would get wet, it just smelled rank. Unfortunately, this sketchbook didn't really hit for me. Now, I started out like usual with some swatching. I have some acrylic inks swatched on the inside cover page, and I really ended up loving using acrylic inks in this sketchbook. You can see that later. For those of you who have watched my spring art haul, you'll recognize these pages. These are all of the swatches I did for my huge watercolor art haul that I did in March of this year. I got a whole bunch of new watercolors from Core, Daniel Smith, Jackman's, and Rosa Gallery. Now this image and the one on the next page are both from the International Watercolor Masters Festival. I did a 3-day workshop and I actually had time to do duplicates of each of the paintings that we did during the workshop, mostly because the demos were step by step and I had to wait around for everybody else to finish before I could keep going. So I just painted everything twice. I just had that much time. These 2 pages were warm-up exercises that I did when I was testing the Paul Rubens 24 Ocean palette. And this page is actually one of the first plein air paintings I did in this sketchbook, which is just some flowers from my backyard. These are just a couple of little sketch experiments I did using some reference images from our anniversary trip to Italy. I would say I primarily worked from references within this sketchbook, and these are a few from the North Devon coast from a camping trip that we did in June. Now, the first one was way overworked and had too much busyness, and the second one I think was far more successful. Similarly, I was trying to paint the bothy that we were camping in, and it was just a little too present on the page, but when I did the sand dunes from Bronton Barrows, it was more successful. Now, earlier I talked about not painting from photos that I hadn't actually experienced myself, and these next 4 pages are really good examples of that. These are from a little watercolor course that I was working on that had to do with seascapes. These are reference images that the instructor gave, and frankly, they just do absolutely nothing for me. I tried to use them to learn the techniques, but even though I think I did an okay job, I just don't feel connected to these images in my sketchbook. They just do absolutely nothing for me. Here's another relatively unsuccessful attempt to recreate my own reference image, and all of the rest of the images in this sketchbook are my own. These 2 pages show one of my plein air adventures at my husband's farm, and then another painting from a reference along the coast. Finally, nearing the end of the book, I started using acrylic inks, and I really enjoyed using them on this paper. I think that I avoided kind of using this paper for really serious studies after the very first 2 pages because it stank so bad, and also because it buckled a lot. But the acrylic inks didn't seem to buckle it all that much, I guess because I wasn't using as much water as I normally would do with watercolor. And so I really enjoyed working with those inks in this from that point forward. These are a few sunset studies. These are from a reference photo of a hike I did in Madeira a couple of years ago, right at sunrise. And the first one is more studied, and I would say the second one is a lot looser. I did that intentionally because sometimes when I study something, I feel like I tighten up. Finally, we have this garden portrait from my backyard that I painted on my tripod with acrylic inks and watercolor, and I just wanted to paint something from my house so that I would have it for the future. The last image in this sketchbook is a reference image from our trip to Italy. This is just outside the agriturismo that we stayed at, and I was practicing shades and shadows and the really deep contrast that you get with backlit trees. So that is the end of this sketchbook, and now I'm going to give you a few reflections. Once I realized that I wasn't going to be using this sketchbook for really serious sit-down paintings, I think I got really free with the experimentation, and so I feel like I just tried a lot of different techniques and different ways of representing landscapes in this, and I think that led to some growth. So I tried to notice any time that I was getting a little too tight with my painting or had not selected the right composition, but instead of getting upset, I just moved on to the next page and tried again or tried a different technique. I think where I found the most joy and satisfaction was in these super bright and vibrant acrylic inks that I started using near the end of July. These really helped me feel so comfortable with using this. I loved testing out different materials, and I just feel like all of these experiments wouldn't have been possible in a sketchbook of this size had I felt really precious about it. But because it was homemade, I didn't worry about ruining it because I knew if I wanted to, I could just make another one. The last stop on this sketchbook tour is this Etchr accordion sketchbook. It is a very small and cute and compact A6 format, which is 4 inches by 6 inches in portrait orientation. It has 100% cotton hot press paper in white, and it is, as mentioned, a concertina or accordion style, which means it opens up into a zigzag of a long page. If you count the individual folded pages, there are between 40 to 42, depending on if you count the front and back covers, and it cost £16.90 or approximately 40 pence per page. Now, if you have watched my video about everything that I painted in Italy, then you have probably seen everything that's in one side of this sketchbook, but I'm going to show you the whole thing now. Now, one of the issues I ran into is that these back covers, they don't really connect all that well when the book is open. This leads to the pages sort of stretching while you're working, so you have to make sure you tuck one edge under the other while you work to give yourself a flat surface to work on. Here, I started with this in my back garden on a spring evening. I noticed the lavender was out and some of the other flowers were out, and I just did a few little live studies in my backyard. Then after our trip to France, I used a reference image of this bicycle up against a wall on a street in France. We didn't have a chance to do too much outdoor stuff because it was raining the whole time, but I took that one reference and I really liked it. I also painted this sculpture from the Etchr Manor Gardens, and then I used this sketchbook to paint plein air while I was helping my husband at his farm on the weekends. I took a cute little portrait of my dog as she was waiting in the grass for us to finish up, and then I worked on some tulips in my, again, never-ending quest to capture a tulip. Now this page is probably my least favorite of the entire book. I was working with pen and ink in the top, and I just didn't like the way all of those greens were going together, and the second page I just abandoned because it just wasn't working out. This is one of the spreads I did when I was in Italy, and reflecting on it now, I think it's not super amazing, but I really enjoyed doing it, as you would if you were standing on a balcony overlooking a beautiful valley in Italy. Some of these other little paintings are from reference images, but this one was done at a table after the Biennale overlooking the skyline of Venice. Now, this is my first proper urban sketching attempt. I described more about that in my Italy video, and this is the longest painting that I did in this accordion style sketchbook. I'm going to have to zoom out here to show you the entirety, but I did this on a hike while we were at the top of a peak in the Apennine mountain range. And I decided, hey, we have a beautiful panoramic image in front of us. I'm going to try to do it in this sketchbook. And I used my flat brush, and I really loved the way it turned out. I did a couple other reference images and live paintings while I was in Italy. This one is of a beautiful wrought iron sign that I found in a village called Castello. And then we have a few images from Bologna where there are just delightful colors to be seen in the city, where they have these beautiful orange and pink colored buildings, lots of arcades, and of course, bicycles and Vespas all over the place. This is some swatching I did with some Daniel Smith watercolors and watercolor sticks, and that is the end of the accordion sketchbook. Now, my main takeaway from this sketchbook is that it is really fun to have something small and cute and accessible that you can put in your bag or your purse and bring out whenever you are sitting around feeling bored. Maybe you're having coffee out somewhere and you have a few extra minutes while other people are browsing. And I just use this as a little kind of a low pressure sketchbook. It turns out that having a low pressure sketchbook actually inspires you to paint more, because you feel like you have a place to put all of your really bad, ugly stuff, like these two pages here, as you can see. So I think this sketchbook being so small just didn't feel that precious to me, and I was willing to experiment on these pages and take a chance on some of these spreads that I may not otherwise have, because I did feel a little bit intimidated by this sketchbook when I first got it, knowing that it was a concertina and seeing how other people have used concertina sketchbooks. The paper in here is excellent, as all Etchr paper is. I'd never worked on hot press paper from Etchr before, and I really liked working on it. I think that I was able to capture a few scenes from Italy that I'm really proud of and that are going to remain in my memory forever. Now, as mentioned, as a little bonus, I'm going to take you through these partially completed sketchbooks, and this one is the Etchr Everyday in B5 orientation. I did already have this in my collection, and I am trying to use up some of the sketchbooks that I have so that I am not just hoarding them. I brought this one to Italy with me, and it was just 1 inch shorter and 1 inch less wide as the Handmade Arch sketchbook that I showed earlier. And this one actually fit into my backpack perfectly, so I was able to bring it out plein air sketching with me quite a few times. So the first plein air painting I did was actually at Saunton Sands, which is a beach we stopped at after hiking one day. And then these images are just from right outside the bothy. They are views of the landscape that we could see in the morning when we woke up. The scenery in North Devon is amongst my favorite in the entire Southwest. And I painted this scene out at Helly Bay on the rocks with my dog patiently waiting at my feet. And I think you can sort of tell the difference between a plein air session and a studied reference photo session. The plein air sessions have very loose, free brushwork, and this is something that I'm trying to integrate more into my studied work. This is an example of a precision study that I did, which included like a very detailed drawing and then several washes of wet on wet and wet on dry watercolor. And these two last images are from our last camping trip that we did in a different bothy called the Foreland Bothy. It was set remotely into this beautiful valley, and I could see the tops of the mountains with some beautiful plantings on them. And I think that both of these types of both plein air and studied drawings have their place in sketchbooks, but my aim is to sort of unify my style at some point so that things don't look so visibly either overworked or underdeveloped. So trying to find a unity between them. The last sketchbook we're going to go through just has a few pages because a lot of these I used for swatching. And this is an ARRTX hot press watercolor sketchbook. It's 100% cotton, or so they tell me. And this was given to me for free as a gift as part of another set of things that ARRTX had sent to me before. So I'm just about halfway finished. And what I found about this sketchbook is that it has a very similar paper quality as the hot press sketchbook from Etchr, the accordion style one that I was working with earlier. And I really like this sort of elongated rectangular format. It's really good for quick landscape studies when I'm out and about, and it's small enough that it actually fits in my crossbody bag. So I can put in a tiny little paint palette, a water pen, and bring this sketchbook with me, and I'll have something. So I've been kind of using it as a sketchbook to bring with me when I'm walking the dog. Now, I used this sketchbook to demo a few techniques. I did a test where I was using ARRTX direct ink markers and kind of using them as watercolor markers in a sense, so kind of using them with wetness on the page and watching how they spread. I swatched out my new Renaissance Grand Godettes in this sketchbook, and I love the way the granulation shows up. And then these are some of the landscape studies that I've done while I've been out walking my dog. So it's really easy to pop this into my bag. It's very small and compact, and it has a great quality paper. So I have been using it whenever I have the chance and it's not too hot and we can find a little bit of shade to sit under. My dog doesn't love when I stop and study landscapes, but that's okay. She can survive. I took this around the city, and I've also used it in the cathedral in Wells. And finally, I have a couple of countryside studies that I did on my walk last week. I thought I'd give you just a little summary of what I have found each of these individual sketchbooks to be good for. So the first sketchbook, the large square one with the very heavyweight paper, is ideal for layers and lifting. I was able to literally dump water and wipe things away when I wanted to on this paper, and you could not tell at all. The second sketchbook, which is the Etchr Perfect sketchbook, is ideal for plein air. It fit perfectly into my backpack, and I brought it everywhere with me. I loved the landscape orientation and being able to do panoramic images. The second handmade sketchbook that I used was perfect for experimentation because the paper had gone off and I didn't want to use it for really serious studies. So I ended up using it to play with compositions and different types of materials. Finally, the small A6 accordion sketchbook is perfect for quick sketching on the go. It fits into your bag easily and you can just bring it with you wherever you want to go. Now, in that vein, I wanted to show you some of the sketchbooks that I have started and I'm planning to continue working in for the rest of the summer and early autumn. The first one is this mini A6 sized Stillman and Byrne beta series. Now, you know that I love the beta series sketchbook. I featured it in one of my sketchbook tours last year. And so I picked up this really tiny version because I became converted to the idea of a purse or pocket sketchbook after using the A6 accordion style from Etchr. Speaking of Etchr, they really kindly sent me two brand new sketchbooks to add to my collection. The first is another accordion style sketchbook, and it is so cute. I think it's called the Fire Horse. It might be one of their limited edition ones. They just reached out to me out of the blue and said, "Hey, we really like the sketches you've created and we want to send you a couple of sketchbooks." They didn't ask me to review them or do anything other than just enjoy using them. So that's that one. And the second one, which I'm so excited about, is this Etchr panoramic format cold pressed everyday sketchbook. I love the everyday sketchbooks. They have a slightly thinner weight of paper. They're not 300 GSM, they're 230 GSM, but the paper holds up really well. And now that I know I love working in panoramic orientation, I'm really looking forward to testing out this sketchbook. Now, those are the sketchbooks that are kind of ready-made, but we also have a beautiful pile of brand new handmade watercolor sketchbooks that I just finished putting together this weekend. Now, if you are curious about how I design my covers, I have a short little tutorial. It's like 5 or 6 minutes long where I demo how I create these covers using just like some splashes of paint and some line drawings. So if you're curious about how I do it and want to recreate the same effect for your sketchbooks, you can go ahead and watch that video right after this one. I'll link it in the end cards. So the first big sketchbook here in the middle is actually just a mixed media mixture. So this has 3 different types of cellulose mixed media paper. There's Canson XL, Canson mixed media, and Talon's mixed media. These are just taken from some pads where I had just a couple of sheets left in each of the pads, and it was kind of annoying to have them because they all come in spiral ring pads. And so I just ripped out all the pages and created my own little sketchbook. These two sketchbooks I have made from one of my favorite budget papers of all time, and that is Meeden 100% cotton, cold press, 140-pound paper. Yes, I love this paper. I use it for all of my testing and experimentation. I create my swatches on it, and I had a really nice 16 by 12 inch pad of it sitting around unused, and I thought, I'm going to make some sketchbooks out of this because, it is such a great paper, and it's kind of shocking that there isn't actually a sketchbook with that paper yet. So I decided to make my own, and I did it in the exact same size and orientation as the Plein sketchbook that I loved so much, which is the Etchr Landscape Perfect sketchbook. So those are the exact same size. Those sketchbooks are identical. I've just put different covers on them. Now I have 2 other sketchbooks, and this one, actually both of them are soft cover. So I opted not to put a hard front and back on these ones, but they are prepared exactly the same way as the others with a glue binding finished off with some book tape. This one is a mixture of Baohong cold press, rough, and hot press paper. I had a little sample pack that had all different types of paper from Baohong, and I decided to turn it into a sketchbook. So this is going to be a space where I can experiment on different textures of paper, and I'm really excited about that one. The final one in this series is a paper I have never used before. I picked up this paper on sale when Jackson's was doing their paper sale recently, and this is an Italian brand called Magnani. So it's called Magnani 1404. This is their cold press, and it is 100% cotton. If you've ever used this paper before, please let me know if you've liked it. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. It looks really good, but I have not swatched it. I have not put any paint on it. I just decided to create a sketchbook out of a few of the half sheets that I picked up. So this is my new beautiful family of handmade watercolor sketchbooks and my mixed media sketchbook. And I'm really looking forward to putting these to the test. You can be sure that I will be updating you as soon as they're ready to share. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventurous plein air and homemade watercolor sketchbook tour. I really hope you've enjoyed watching, and I will see you in the next one.